Major funding for Florida Matters comes from the Mosaic Company, a leading producer of fertilizer made from phosphate, a natural resource found in Florida. America's farmers depend on Florida phosphate for their crop nutrition needs. Mosaic, helping America grow.
We're taking a look at crime in our area, what's on the rise, who's affected, and what you can do about it. Welcome to Florida Matters. I'm Irene Mayer. After reading the daily news, it might feel like the world has gone crazy. Is the crime in the Bay Area really as bad as it seems? Or is it that we're inundated by media that make it seem worse than it really is? We asked area media experts to weigh in on the discussion. Joshua Stewart has the story.
According to a recent study by Florida State University, residents of Florida are worried they'll fall victim to crime, even though the chances are low.
We found that 95% of that 500 stratified sample of Florida citizens that we surveyed, 95% felt that during the next 12 months they would fall victim of a violent crime. Now the truth is only 1% or less will fall victim to a violent crime, but the perception is that crime is everywhere.
Some law enforcement officials say they're feeling the heat under the glare of public perception.
When you look at the crimes that make the news, such as children being victims of abduction, victims of sexual battery, is Florida worse than other states? And per capita, I would tell you absolutely not.
Sheriff Judd argues that aggressive tactics used by law enforcement to capture criminals will lead to more arrests, and when that makes the evening news, people have to take it into context.
I can remember at one time, they accused Polk County of having a methamphetamine problem because we'd made so many arrests. So does that mean if we don't arrest anybody, there's not a methamphetamine problem? The reality of it is, our drug problem in Polk County is no greater or no less than any of our colleagues around the state or around the nation. But when we aggressively pursue and arrest those who violate the drug laws or the child predator laws, it doesn't mean that there's more crime here. It just means we've uncovered more crime because we're very proactive in keeping the people of our community safe.
So is the saying true, if it bleeds, it leads?
You know, I actually really don't like that saying because it sounds really crass given the amount of thought and consideration that goes into what we're going to cover, how much coverage we'll give it, and where we place it on the page. But that said, I understand the sentiment because we're all human, and even though part of us might recoil at violence and death, there's another part of us that's really interested.
I mean, there's, some truth to that, but then it's a broad generalization. I think certainly now, in a more modern era, what bleeds leads is not as much as it used to be.
It's true. You really in the media, not just television, because I think television gets a bad rap, but it's newspapers, it's radio, and it is television, that crime sells papers, it gets ratings. That is a fact. One of the reasons that crime is covered so much in the media, it's easy to cover. You show up at a crime scene, great visuals, easy to shoot, the police come over, they give you the information. Covering crime is the easiest thing to cover. It is the least expensive thing to cover. It doesn't take days to unearth a story. It takes literally minutes, sometimes maybe an hour. And for people that say you shouldn't cover crime, that's the analogy of, well, if you see an accident, don't look at it. But the fact is, people will rubberneck and people will watch crime on television and reading a newspaper.
While working in the Richmond news market, Elliot Weiser developed a set of crime reporting guidelines that became his station's model.
In 1993, my wife told me she was pregnant, and that was our first child. And I decided that I did not want my child to see what I saw. Saw some really gruesome things, and I just decided that enough was enough, and I was just perpetuating the problem that I saw in television.
Before that, he'd been one of those reporters that followed the "if it bleeds, it leads" mantra.
I was like everyone else. You got excited when you had big crimes. You went out there, you got the pictures, you knew that people were going to watch the crime stories. And I did that from the days when I was a reporter. I mean, when you covered a crime as a reporter, that was great. It was, wow, this is the big story, and everyone got excited.
Weiser's guidelines are pretty simple.
You will never see a dead body. If we interview a family of a victim, we ask their permission first. We don't just throw a microphone in their face and say, how do you feel? If we go to a SWAT team situation, we will never show the location of SWAT teams. We won't use the name of juveniles unless they're charged as adults.
Weiser was part of Bay News 9's early operations and insisted the reporters and producers used those guidelines when reporting on crime. They're still in place today.
I think that the balance has to be that you have to cover crime. You cannot ignore crime. But you also have to make a commitment to covering other stories, education, social issues, health issues.
The St. Petersburg Times has a kind of test to determine whether certain crime details are just too shocking to publish.
We have this thing called the Cheerios test, and it's, you know, if it's going to make somebody spit out their Cheerios or choke on their Cheerios at breakfast, we're probably not going to run it.
Well, yeah, there are sort of general guidelines. You know, we won't run pictures of dead bodies, even though we have them.
Altman says online journalism has more flexibility in the volume of crime they report because of the difference in the way people view news on the web.
People come to the web. It's like coming to a restaurant and ordering from a menu. You have the ability to tailor what you want by clicking on what you want.
For print journalism, Jenkins says her paper has to strike a balance among the many events that happen in any given week.
The St. Pete Times has a series right now of stories called Random Acts, and it has nothing to do with crime. It has to do with people who do good things for their neighbors. And I think stories like that are really important because there are good things happening out there, and we don't want to give out this perception that we're a community constantly under siege, that, you know, that there are other stories to be covered than just crime.
For Florida Matters, I'm Joshua Stewart.
There are several groups in the Bay Area that work with law enforcement to help victims of crime. They're on the front lines, so to speak, and they see the faces behind the statistics. Joshua Stewart has our story.
Nikki Daniels, executive director of the Family Justice Center, deals with victims of domestic violence on a daily basis. While their stories may be different, each victim shares a common feeling of loss and pain.
I was working with a mom who had a 6-month-old baby who came for help because she had been a victim of domestic violence. And she had gotten an injunction, and she got the batterer, who was her husband, out of the home. And she didn't want her child growing up around this abuse. So she was really taking all the right steps. But he wasn't helping with the child support. She wasn't able to find child care and hadn't been working and then wasn't able to find a job because of the economy. So she came to us saying, I'm just going to have to take his punches because I can't feed my baby and my electric is turned off.
And Daniels has noticed an increase in the severity of cases within the past few months.
What we do see is that the level of violence is higher. So people who are suffering, it's much more extreme violence than we've seen in the past.
In fact, the Florida Coalition Against Domestic Violence found a 37% increase in the demand for emergency shelter services from August to December 2008.
It's a huge issue. We have almost 10,000 police reports every year in Hillsborough County. We're the second highest in the state of Florida as far as the numbers of police reports. So we know that it's a huge issue for us. We need to be able to address it.
The Family Justice Center is a centralized location for victims of domestic violence to meet with over 15 different agencies that can help ease the transition from a violent relationship to a life of independence. With multiple services concentrated in one place, it not only makes getting help easier, it makes it safer too.
So here they can come to one location, be behind bulletproof walls and bulletproof glass, and get everything they need.
The center takes extra safety precautions, utilizing security cameras and panic buttons throughout the facility. Mothers can bring their children here away from the abuse and the pain. It's a place to begin rebuilding their lives.
Well, we do have some counseling services available here on site for children.
The Family Justice Center is a nonprofit funded largely by the Children's Board of Hillsborough County, as well as private donations and grants. But with the economy in recession, contributions have dwindled.
So for us and for all of our partners, donations are down. So that makes it much more difficult to be able to function. And what we're seeing are higher levels of need with fewer dollars to be able to provide the services.
With new cases of domestic violence on the rise, Daniels hopes for community involvement on all levels.
Be aware of domestic violence. Don't just look at it as a family issue. It's a private issue. I don't want to get involved, but try to help that victim get services and get help. Another thing, all of the agencies, including the Family Justice Center, need volunteers. We can always use help. There's so many different things that people could get involved in.
If you or someone you know needs assistance from the Family Justice Center, you can go to their website at fjchc.org. For Florida Matters, I'm Joshua Stewart.
Tampa police recently announced that the city's crime rate dropped a whopping 46% in the past 6 years. And the Florida Department of Law Enforcement reported a significant drop in crime statewide in the past 10 years. We asked local law enforcement about the current trends and what it means for residents. Carson Cooper has our story.
When it comes to recent crime trends in the Bay Area, local sheriffs are seeing a wide range of patterns.
In Polk County, we've seen our violent crime turn downward.
Our murders are down this year over last year.
We've seen a decrease in homicides, which is a good thing, about a 9% decrease in our primary service areas.
In 2007 and 2008, violent crimes were down in Manatee County.
While index crimes such as homicide have trended downward, other crimes are on the upswing.
We're seeing a fairly significant increase in property crimes.
We've seen a significant increase in armed robberies, primarily as it relates to pharmacies, and the purpose of the robbery is to get pharmaceutical drugs, not necessarily money.
With the downturn of the economy, we've seen our property crime start to creep up. And we're not happy about that, but we understand why. When the economy's bad, people are somehow going to create income or supplement a depressed income.
There's a definite incline in property-driven crimes. And I will tell you that in 2007 and 2008, violent crimes were down in Manatee County. But in 2008, overall crime was up 2.4%, all attributed to vehicle burglaries, residential burglaries, and shoplifting. And of course, those crimes are going to be driven by the economy.
Another growing concern for Bay Area law enforcement is the volume of gang activity.
Florida is really, the gang problem has really blossomed in Florida over the last few years. And, in this county alone, upwards of probably 1,500 certified gang members that we deal with. Those are just ones we know about.
Gangs are a fact of life in Florida. The Attorney General has had an initiative to impact gangs on every front. We're a member of that task force.
We do have gang activity, and I think we're seeing an increase in that gang activity. There was a time that in Pinellas County we were kind of proud of the fact that we didn't have the amount of gang activity that some of the other surrounding counties had. But we're starting to see more gang activity, and we've dedicated resources to deal with that.
Sheriff G also warns of assuming that gangs only hurt themselves.
It is very dangerous because these people do carry weapons, and violence is part of that culture, so it is a serious threat to all of us.
We have 14 identified gangs in Manatee County, between 600 and 800 members and associate members. 2 years ago, we started an investigation called the RICO, Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organization.
In spite of the increased activity, Manatee Sheriff Brad Stubbe is seeing some progress.
This investigative technique is working rather well, because what you're doing is you're looking at the criminal enterprise, and it's not necessarily what they're doing now as opposed to what they've done in the past and their criminal history and their past convictions.
By using racketeering statutes, the punishment is becoming stiffer for gang members.
We've taken close to 50 gang members off our streets, and they're in prison right now.
Sheriff G is confident law enforcement can curtail gang activity with the help of parents.
We can get our arms around this problem, and we can do something about it. That's the good news. We can stop this if parents will get more involved and proactive and don't enable their children to be part of this. Look at who your children are hanging around, and just take an honest, objective look at who they're around, and ask yourself, is this just normal teenage activity hanging out, or is there possibly something more sinister going on?
Sheriff Grady Judd believes that keeping our community safer is a team effort.
It's the men and women of the Sheriff's Office partnering with the community, the men and women who put their life on the line every day and stand in the gap between good and evil.
For Florida Matters, I'm Carson Cooper.
When a child fails to get a good education, it can lead to criminal activity in adolescence or adulthood. We took a look at the connection between reading, writing, and arithmetic and what it has to do with 10/20 to life.
The national statistics for student performance in public schools are grim. In Florida, less than 2/3 of ninth graders graduate with a standard diploma from high school within 4 years. So where do our dropouts go? Many wind up on the streets and into trouble.
On the average city street, all they know is hustling the wrong way. You know, not painting a house or mowing a lawn. All they see is drug dealers or thieves. Underprivileged or poverty-stricken kids tend to seek out something more than just everyday life, and they seek it out in the wrong way. Behaviors become those of others before them that do drugs, do crimes, wrong mentors.
Alan Krotzer grew up in the Bay Area and experienced the juvenile justice system at an early age. He has seen firsthand how easy it is for juvenile delinquents to continue their criminal ways.
I myself was an at-risk youth and spent 27 months on a 36-month sentence, incarcerated youth offender prison here in the state. When I was released, I was wrongly convicted 31 days later. Robbery, rape, assault, armed burglary, kidnap. I spent more than half my life in prison. I went in at 20 and came out at 45. I spent 24 years, 6 months, 13 days, and 4 hours in prison. I had the minimum of education given to me, only a high school diploma, which is a bad situation. You got a bunch of people locked up and not trying to rehabilitate them. That's horrible, and some of them are going to get out and make more victims, commit more crimes.
As an intervention specialist with the Department of Juvenile Justice, Krotzer tries to get kids before they begin a cycle of crime that spirals out of control.
These kids are the ones that's going to be able to be in control either positively or negatively in the next 10 to 15 years. And we can bring down the recidivism rate if we can educate these children, and we can get them off the streets and into something more positive.
Children born into poverty in crime-stricken neighborhoods with little support at home experience a greater uphill climb in the classroom compared to their counterparts from higher socioeconomic levels. Starting out at such a disadvantage can be intimidating and self-defeating.
These kids are looking for somebody to connect to in their lives, and oftentimes it can be a negative peer group that pushes them in a direction that they may or may not have ever wanted to go, but they wind up there.
And whether it's a fair assessment or not, many experts in the field now predict how well a student might do in adult life based on their third grade FCAT scores.
If a kid's not reading by third grade, it usually means that there's something going on with them. Either they're having difficulty learning, or they're not having access to the educational curriculum to be able to learn. If you're not reading by third grade, you are at higher risk for poor outcomes, such as juvenile delinquency, teen pregnancy, dropout.
Basically, they're going to most large inner cities, into the indigent, neighborhoods, and that's where they get their test scores from. Those people are more likely to not get an education, therefore more likely not to get into the workforce or be productive citizens, therefore commit crimes and go to prison.
The state of Florida spends about $3 per prisoner for every $1 spent per public school student. It's a tough number to stomach for many rehabilitation professionals. A nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. called the Children's Defense Fund puts out an annual report called The State of America's Children. Through its research, the Children's Defense Fund has recognized a pattern between low socioeconomic groups and the corresponding makeup of most juvenile detention centers. They call this the cradle-to-prison pipeline.
There's a system out there that promotes that these people that are indigent or minorities or whatever be pushed toward from the cradle to jail.
According to the CDF, poverty, racial disparities, and a culture of punishment rather than prevention and early intervention are key forces driving that pipeline.
We certainly know that if kids have poor outcomes, that if they're not doing well in school, if they're not functioning in their homes, if they're not functioning in their communities, that oftentimes, unfortunately, the criminal justice system becomes the place that has to manage these children.
60% of the kids that go through the Department of Juvenile Justice end up in prison. It's horrible for me to know that 60% of the kids, if I got 10 kids in the room I'm talking to, that the stats say six of them are going to prison. You know, and I try to nail that home.
The cost of crime in Florida is at an all-time high. Some within the criminal justice system think the money would be better spent on education and prevention rather than construction of more prisons.
Currently, right now, we have 700,000 people leaving state and federal prisons and re-entering society. And many of these people are simply ill-equipped to deal with what is an ever-increasing competitive society. And again, this is where education, whether it's at the front end, the middle end, or the back end, education can make a difference in adult offenders' lives, in young people's lives, in adolescents' lives.
Other child advocates agree.
They say it takes a whole village to raise one child. If you know a child is in that type of danger or becoming a criminal or have criminal behavior patterns, you must step in. It's going to take a whole neighborhood to do that.
Time is one of the most powerful things that any of us can give kids, whether we're time with our kids as parents, as mentors, as volunteers. It's the most valuable thing. We've got to care. You know, it's one of these things, we pay you now or you pay later.
For Florida Matters, I'm Carson Cooper.
Larry Elliston is here now to bring us our next Florida story, and it continues our crime theme, right, Larry?
Irene, commit the crime, do the time. Eventually, a criminal will get caught and he or she will go to jail. It's an unavoidable fact that Tyrone Summerall knows all too well. Realizing he was throwing his own life away and endangering the lives of many others, Tyrone saw the light. The inside of a jail cell was something this man knows all about. His time behind bars totaled 10 years. For 34-year-old Tyrone Summerall, it all began here on Grapefruit Avenue in Lake Alfred.
I mean, that's what went on. Crime, crime, crime.
Tyrone was just 8 years old.
My mom tried to provide 7 kids, one mom, no dad, and she wanted to do much for us but didn't have the means to. And so a lot of times I used to feel like left out. A lot of kids getting Christmas presents, we didn't. A lot of kids having bicycles, we don't. And so we just said we're gonna get everything we wanted however we had to.
It began with a break-in to steal a piece of cake, and then Tyrone and his brothers hit the school down the street.
Because we thought something valuable was in there, and we just had no regards for anything.
Schooled in the ways of crime, Tyrone and his brothers were just getting started.
It went from a level of sneaking type stealing to boldness in taking. That boldness led to picking up a gun and doing armed robberies.
In the small Polk County town of Lake Alfred, population 4,000, Summerall was a household name with police.
A lot of times they were committing some serious crimes within the community, and a lot of times it made it kind of tough. And sometimes it didn't make it so tough because depending on what the crime was, a lot of times we pretty well knew who was probably behind it.
Armed robbery, aggravated assault, grand theft, home invasion. Tyrone's crime spree seemed to have no end.
Over 1,000. I can tell you that. It came to a point where we was doing a crime every day, multiple crimes every day. I mean, and it's just like I couldn't rest unless I did a crime. One of them, the one that got in trouble with me, got sentenced to 52 years. And it's just like, we came to a point that whatever that we set our mind that we wanted, it was nothing could stop us. No burglar alarm, it was not one thing that could stop us.
And then one day, sitting in the county jail in Bartow, something happened to Tyrone.
As I read the Bible, I just felt it was something in there pulling at me. And then when I realized that God still loved me despite what I done and that he was willing to accept me, that changed my life.
Tyrone's epiphany came 8 years ago. Since then, he's gone straight. His new devotion to doing right, not wrong, has changed his life. There was a time when Tyrone Summerall's presence at the Lake Alfred police station meant Chief Art Bodenheimer had taken him into custody once again. Stopping by on a social call would have been unimaginable.
Hello, how you doing?
Hey, Tyrone, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good to see you today.
Good
Have a
seeing
seat.
you.
Let's talk. You know, I knew you were going to come in today, so I know how things have been going pretty well, but I'm just thinking back on some of the things over the years, and I went and I printed this out today, and I know you probably don't remember all this, but that's actually your criminal history from back in the day. So, how's everything been going?
It's been going great.
With a busy lawn care business, a moving company, and a family with 2 kids, Tyrone Summerall seems determined to put his criminal past behind him. He even shares his previous mistakes with young teens, hoping to keep them from going astray like he did.
I come and help them with their homework if they want to, try to work out with them, and just try to get them to believe in themselves that you can do right just as well as, you know, as they are doing wrong. You can do right, and right is good.
With his own children, 5-year-old
Amen.
Tyrone and 4-year-old Michaela, Summerall and his wife Lisa intend to raise their kids with the strength of a family.
You know, one parent can only do so much, and some single parents do a great job, but that's not the design for a family. We always loved our dad and wanted him to be there. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. He used to drive semi-trucks, and I used to sit on the side of the highway and look to see if I can see him. And, you know, it brings tears to my eyes, but, you know, I desired my dad to be there with me, you know.
I understand. Well, I'm glad you came up and saw me today. If you ever need anything, come by and see me. Okay. All right. I appreciate what you're doing in the community.
Okay, thanks.
Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd, who supports faith-based training among inmates, says the only way to change criminal behavior is to change from the inside out.
Tyrone is an example of what he was and what he is now. And he can say, I was there, and now I'm not. And here's how I changed, and here's how my life is better. And here's how you can have a better quality of life as well. We appreciate Tyrone.
If you don't want to show your teeth, you just smile at him. You don't have to. Okay, you.
Certainly looks like Tyrone has seen the last of the jail cell, wouldn't you say?
I think so. Irene, Tyrone is very proud of what he's accomplished over the last 8 years, and he should be. So I think he'll be fine.
Good, I do too. Thanks, Larry. And thank you for joining us this week. The discussion continues on our website, where you can post comments, ask questions, or contribute story ideas for upcoming episodes. We'll be sure to get back to you.
Major funding for Florida Matters comes from the Mosaic Company, a leading producer of fertilizer made from phosphate, a natural resource found in Florida. America's farmers depend on Florida phosphate for their crop nutrition needs. Mosaic, helping America grow.